You're listening to the PropTech Pioneers podcast. This podcast brings startups and MLSs closer together by exploring the beauty and the struggle of real estate data and technology. I believe real estate is on the cusp of a major transformation driven by better access to data, a new crop of pragmatic founders, and pent-up frustration with the status quo. These are conversations with those pioneers that are leading that transformation within the MLS landscape. I'm your host, Evan Knowles. I'm an entrepreneur building a fintech company called Simba that helps realtors manage their financial health using MLS data. And I wish I had access to these conversations earlier in my journey. So I thought I'd help future entrepreneurs and MLS executives learn from each other in a more open and accessible fashion. I hope you enjoy. Now let's jump into it. All right, welcome back to the PropTech Pioneers podcast. This is Evan Knowles, your host, and today I'm joined by Rob Hahn. And Rob and I connected after one of my last episodes with Hayden of OcuCell. And Rob reached out and said, "Hey, I really resonated with this episode. Let's get on and just kind of jam and get on a call and talk about, why do I care about this episode? Why did it resonate with me?" And so we had an awesome conversation, and we're going to grow that conversation here on this podcast. So
right on.
Looking forward to getting you on here and chatting about all things, prop tech. A few things I want to dig into though are the brokerage business model. You've been deep into that world, MLS kind of consolidation, and just general MLS questions, which you also have deep experience with. And then your latest venture, which I want you to tell us about.
Sure.
And many of you might know Rob from his own podcast, Vendor Alley, with Greg, and it's a great resource. I remember when I was starting my company, I did look at y'all's website and learned a lot just from going through some of those conversations and just what is being talked about in the space. And you guys do a great job of that. So, Rob, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, man. This is a pleasure. And it's kind of cool that I actually now get to be on PropTech Pioneers podcast, since I guess technically I'm in PropTech now. So there's that. And yeah, I do appreciate your kind words about industry relations. That's actually the podcast that Greg Robertson and I do. And you guys probably should have Greg on now that he's no longer working for, the man, and probably has a little bit more freedom in terms of speaking his mind. Might be the best. But yeah, look, man, your episode with Hayden, the OcuCell episode, really resonated because you guys were talking about some of the challenges, some of the difficulties of being a prop tech company in residential real estate today, right?
Yeah.
And this has been something that I've personally been sort of passionate about really since I joined real estate. So a bit about my background, because I don't know that all of your people know who I am, but I'm mostly known as like a blogger and speaker, but my day job really has been as a strategy consultant mostly to MLSs. Although, obviously I've worked for large brokerages, franchises. When you're a consultant, man, you're just you're a mercenary. You work for whoever can afford your rates. But a lot of it was with MLSs. And one of the big things I've always tried to fight for was we're making it very, very difficult for especially startups, especially younger companies that have a really cool idea. They want to try it, and we just make life difficult for them. All right. So I've tried over the years to change that. But, when you're a consultant, your work product is a deck, right? Like, here's a recommendation,
At the end of the day, they still have to execute.
Yeah, exactly. And that hasn't quite happened yet. And I think, things are changing. Certainly organizations like RESO, they make it a little bit easier, a lot easier. Sam does a great job over there. So things are improving, but I don't know if it's improving fast enough. So when hearing you guys talk about it, just like resonated with me, and it does connect to my latest venture, but we'll get to that, at the end.
You will. And part of your background, let's back up a little bit, is, you were in the brokerage space with Realogy. So
right. Right.
Give us, just what your role was there, because you
Sure.
already told us, hey, you're in the MLS space, you have a deep understanding there. So set the context on, your understanding and your
Sure.
experience with brokerages.
So, it might be helpful, I think, maybe to go back a little. I'll give you a Reader's Digest version of
Yeah.
my incredibly weird life. Long story short, I graduated law school, decided I want to be a lawyer. I went to work for Wizards of the Coast, the gaming company out in Seattle, because I was a Magic the Gathering pro player and a columnist, etc. While there, I started a .com during .com one, because I'm an old man, so I do have the experience of trying to start a company. Did that, sold that to USA Networks. Was great. Uh, Went left and went to do another startup. 9/11 happened. Written about that on my blog, and ended up in real estate. And ended up at Realogy, working in their commercial real estate division. So Coldwell Banker Commercial was the brand. So I got a bunch of experience with that. But one of my impressions coming out of sort of the internet.com world into real estate back in 2004, 2005 type time frame, was it felt like virgin territory to me. Like there was so much that I felt that real estate was missing in terms of technological advances that had happened that I knew about, being involved in the first generation internet startup. Um, and did that for a few years. Left, went to a data company, left and started my own consulting firm. Basically, that's what I've been doing since 2009. So I've kind of seen it all, right? That's kind of my background. Along the way, I sort of fell into this niche with MLSs, with brokerages, with franchises, with teams, with across the board. But honestly, most of my work has been with MLSs. And a
Yeah.
big part of it for me is like if you work in an industry, this is just like a personal thing of mine. If you work in an industry and you have any sort of options, I feel like you should work on one of the top three big problems of that industry, right? And so when I first got into residential real estate, I pretty quickly realized, there are some really big problems, but one of them was certainly kind of the MLS landscape and how we weren't necessarily making things easy for technological development, right? So the story I like to tell all the time is, okay, since 1990, so since 1990, and I mean, you're significant. I don't even know how old you were in 1990.
I wasn't born yet.
But think about it this way: like, what are like the really big technological revolutions that have happened in real estate since 1990? I can honestly only think of one, which is the advent of the internet itself, creating portals, right? Creating Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, Redfin, because that put information that was previously locked away, right, in private databases of the MLS onto the internet. That was the last, to me, big major change. I think maybe you could argue that e-signatures would be the next big one, right? But apart from that, like, what have we actually seen from just like oh my God, this changes everything type of thing? And I just don't think we've seen it. And I think a big part of the reason is because we make it very, very, very hard for anybody to innovate in real estate.
Yeah,
So,
totally. And, I would also say on the e-signature example, I think that that's not necessarily a niche real estate
right,
product. So,
right,
you could say that, that tailwind was just as much many other industries like legal, as much as it was, real estate.
right,
It wasn't isolated to real estate. So,
right.
yeah, it is difficult to kind of identify how has the industry adapted to change and innovated over the last several years. And one of the places I first wanted to start on that kind of front of adapting and changing business models is, the brokerage business model.
Sure.
Just recently at Inman, Mike Del Preti,
Del Preti, yeah.
Del Preti. I always mix up his last name. I've been on a call with him. He's super smart dude. I love what he's doing for the industry of kind of bringing out the numbers. He was up on stage and he kind of exposed, a lot of the financials of brokerages and how that is changing. And, now that we're coming out of a cycle and into kind of this down market, and we've been in it for a while, what's happening to the brokerage model. And so he showed us that, there's brokerages that have margins that are not as great as others. And so Anywhere, Compass, Douglas Edelman, these are brands that are losing a lot of money. And then you have brands like EXP and Real that have come in that are not. And what it feels like is going on right now is the brokerage business model is becoming a race to the bottom.
Sure.
Of how much can we allow the agents to retain in their commissions and us still make money. And it seems like EXP and Real are onto something. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts? You're shaking your head. Give us your thoughts on those.
I think
those
my only
takes.
thought there. Look, I think Mike does a great job of presenting data, and especially like he'll look at some of the public filings and then create these like really easy to understand charts and graphs, which is phenomenal. I think it's great. Having said that, I mean, this issue with the brokerage model and brokers being unprofitable, I knew when I was working at Realogy, way back in the day. I remember one of my very first conversations. I was a brand new, I want to say at the time I was probably 31, right? So this is like 20 years ago, man. 20 years ago, one of my first big like executive meetings was with the president of Coldwell Banker at the time. And he told me at the time that brokerages were seeing their margins get completely crushed. And they were hovering around, I think he said around 3% profit margin, net profit margin. He said, what's the point? That hasn't changed. It's only gotten worse, right? So I learned that as a young man, as I kept going through the industry over the years, all along I've been verifying it. So to me, at this point, the best source of that isn't even like the public records, public filings data from public companies, because those guys are almost by definition sort of unique, right? I think probably the best source is Real Trends and Steve Murray, who's been doing that for like 30 years, and he's been tracking commission rates and brokerage profit margins and gross margins, for, like I said, 30, 40 years. And the number that he came up with about 10 years ago was 3% net profit margin on 15% gross margin on average, no matter who you are. And I'm like, that's utter crap. I mean, 3% profit margin, why even bother? Like, you could literally go get treasury bills right now that'll pay you 4% yield, right? With no headache, no risk, just, so brokerage has been sucking and suffering for like 30 years now. So this isn't anything new. Up markets, down markets. I mean, during the real estate bubble crash, real estate brokers were suffering, they were hemorrhaging money. And then, things went on a boom, and then it was a boom cycle for a while. But yeah, that hasn't really changed, right?
Yeah.
I think to Mike's credit, though, and to his point, to me, the big takeaway from that presentation was that the old sort of stalwarts, right, the flag bearers, the Realogies, the home services, Compass, because Compass is a very traditional split-based model, that they were hurting compared to these newer low-cost alternatives like EXP and Real. And I would say actually you could look at Fathom, and some of the biggest growing, most successful brokerages in the country today are 100% shops. Like HomeSmart out of Phoenix. Oh God, why am I blanking? Because I keep thinking Benchmark out of Nashville, but they're part of blanking the names blanking right now. But you know what I mean? Like, that's the brokerage model that appears to be working right now. Super low cost, 100% splits. Take all the money, just pay us a transaction fee.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I want to kind of tee that up and explore that brokerage model is how that affects innovation. Because we got margins like that. You don't really have much room to invest in innovation, and then it leaves it up to the agents to start to think about innovation. But I wanted to ask you, agents are a very unique demographic to sell into. For one, the average age is between 55 and 60. And so is it a good thing that the industry, has these margins to invest in technology, and where can more investment come from, given that, that's compressing even more and more? What's your take on that?
So, and I think this has actually been true, like I said, probably from the 90s. Like, this really hasn't changed. The looking towards brokerages for innovation, I think is a fool's errand. Primarily because of what you said, like they don't have the money, they don't
Yeah.
have the margins, and more importantly, and this is a key thing, I've been writing about this since like 2009. So there was one post I remember very clearly. Why it is that Redfin can afford to spend tens of millions of dollars in technology, but Realogy cannot, right? And the example I use is back then, Realogy went out and bought a company, Zip Realty, and they tried to roll out this thing called the Zap platform, which they really thought was it's like, marketing, CRM, transaction management, one of these things. And the software was innovative. It was great, right? And they paid a couple $100 million for this company primarily to get the software so they could roll it out across their entire enormous footprint. I mean, I think we have to call it was an utter failure, right? We've seen that again with Remax going and buying Booge and then trying to roll that out. I think we have to say it was a complete utter failure. And the reason is they do not control the agents, right? Whereas Redfin, their agents are employees of Redfin. So their choices are you either use this platform that your boss just put in front of you, or you can find another job. So based on that, man, to me, a brokerage spending money on technology I'm like, I got to see those numbers. I have to see how that works, right? Because you can't get, if you get 30% of your agents adopting whatever tech tool that you release as a brokerage, you're doing great. You're doing great. A lot of cases, the adoption rate's below 10%. So how in the world, just think about the ROI metrics of that. I go spend $1 million on this thing. Only 10% of agents going to use it. How am I making this back? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, now you're at agents, right? And now you've got to, you got to deal with exactly the thing that you mentioned.
Yeah. And I'm exploring this because as a founder, you're building a technology, you're trying to bring it to market. Where do you enter? We're going to talk about the MLS landscape in just a moment, but oftentimes as a founder, you're told go after the brokerages, go after the enterprise contracts, go sell top down.
Yep.
Very hard to do.
Yep.
One, the money just is not there.
It's not there.
A lot of time for them to make that investment. And then you say, oh, well, in order for a technology company to really get wide distribution and scalability and make a difference, let's go bottoms up. Let's go after the agents. And talk to me about, like you said, you've been writing about this forever. What is it about the real estate agent that makes them a really hard sell? They're lagging when it comes to adoption. You can put the best tool that's going to help them grow their business in front of them. Oftentimes, like you said, good adoption is 20 to 30%. Talk to me about learnings you've had over your career on why that's the case. What's unique about agents that creates that situation?
God, that's a really good question, man. And I don't know that I've really thought through it, so I'm just brainstorming here with you.
Yeah.
That's all right. So we'll just have the conversation. I think my take on is what's unique about real estate agents. There's a few things. Number one, they're all unemployed. They're all 1090, unless you work for Redfin, right? So every real estate agent wakes up every morning unemployed, and they have to go out and hustle, and they have to go make a sale. They have to they're straight commission salespeople. So that's number one. Number two, a lot of real estate agents ended up in that job as a second or third career, right? So it isn't as if there's nobody goes to college with hey, I want to be a real estate agent when I graduate. So let me take these courses and then I'll go do this internship and I'll get a job here. And it's not like that, right? It's like, and you know the story. A lot of the real estate agents out there are what the industry calls soccer moms, right? They're professional women who are professionals. They were working. They have experience in a variety of fields. They have a child, and they're like, I need more flexibility, right? I can't do the 9 to 5 thing anymore. I don't want to. So you know what? I'm going to get my license, and I'm going to start selling real estate kind of part time while I have a young child. That's one. The other one doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but it is something that real estate brokers know. A lot of the real estate agents are people who could not work they're very bad with bosses. So they didn't fit into the American corporate system, right? And in some cases that's wonderful because some of the best entrepreneurs, some of the best salespeople don't do well with having a boss or a manager. You have to be here at 8 o'clock and clock your hours. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, like, I'm one of those people that doesn't really fit my personality. I suspect same for you. Um, so that's the second thing. So you combine those two things, and I think you end up with essentially a customer base that are all very independent, right? Very, very independent, and at the same time, very, very paranoid, right? And the final thing is, if you look at what a real estate agent actually does, like how do they spend their time? Because there's been studies done on this. It's like 90% of their time is spent doing lead gen.
Yeah.
90%. So if you look at the most successful technology companies in real estate, they're all lead generation companies. Zillow ultimately is a lead generation company. Realtor is a lead generation company. Some of these CRM companies are lead generation or lead nurture companies, right? So they're addressing things in the 90% of the time. A lot of the productivity prop tech software is focusing on the 10% of the time. Do you see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that has an impact too. So, yeah, look, if you were a young startup founder and you're like, hey, I see an opportunity here, I would say, look, number one, you gotta ask yourself, like, could I not just make a porn site instead? Because it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
so many
Hey,
easier ways to make money doing
there.
technology
Yeah.
than in real estate, right?
That
But
that's right. It's very very tough.
let's say that you are whack jobs like you and me, because obviously you and I are both in prop tech, and we love real estate. We see something we want to, solve that problem. Then I think probably the next question you have to ask is, are you in the 90% or the 10%?
Yeah.
That's
100%.
the threshold question you've got to go with, right?
Yeah, and another behavior that I noticed, then we can jump to some of this MLS discussion is, agents love to outsource, and they would much rather outsource some of that 10%, and some of that 10% might be really really important stuff like
That's right.
taxes,
That's right.
bookkeeping, um, just customer support. Some of that stuff they'd rather outsource before they adopt a tool. And I think some of that is attributable to the average age there, 55 to 60. I don't want to learn a new piece of technology. I'd rather just hire somebody I trust and put them in
Right.
the seat and do that job for me.
Right.
Um, I notice that behavior because what we're building with Simba, we come into this all the time. We've built a tool to help agents with their financial well-being and manage their uh, pipeline, profitability, taxes, bookkeeping, all in a really great, simple platform. And agents still, I just want to hire, a CPA. I don't want to touch this until tax season, and then I'll hire a
Right.
CPA.
Right.
So there's that behavior too that I've
Right.
noticed with a lot of agents, and you see it where they hire like an admin.
That's
So
exactly right. So
that's
speaking of
something
that,
else.
like, as Simba, man, if I'm you, I start calling CPAs.
So here's what's funny is we went down that route, and here's kind of the story here. We went down that route because I've been asked this question a lot. Why don't you distribute the product through CPAs? We went down that road very far. We interviewed a lot of CPAs, large firms, and said, hey, we built this tool. Can you help us distribute this? Do you have real estate clients that are residential agents? And they said, we don't like working with residential agents. We hate residential real estate agents. We actually want to get to a point in our career where we do not service residential real estate agents. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, they don't do any work because they ask us to do their taxes and they tell us, here's my bank account, figure it out and file my taxes for me. And so, yes, we did think about that, but it comes back to this thing of agents. They focus on that 90% of their time on lead gen, and oftentimes neglect the other stuff, and then they want to outsource. So, that CPA question is actually left a pretty large hole in the market when it does come to financial health and financial well-being for agents. Is that because they neglect it so heavily, their opportunity to outsource it is tough, and they often overpay because agents or CPAs are going to charge them extra for
Sure.
the fact that they are agents. So that, it's tough. That's the one thing we ran into that we've been, working to, circumnavigate is, how do we reach these agents? Because CPAs, just didn't turn out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I
I
don't
don't know.
think
Maybe it's not CPAs. Maybe it's young and hungry accountants, right? Like, what I'm thinking
now,
is, when
yes.
Simba, in a way, like, you guys reminded me a little bit of like crypto tax packages. So since I have crypto holdings and I still have
Yep.
crypto holdings that are down 60% or whatever, it's fine. I'm a long-term Bitcoiner. But a lot of those, like, I've logged in, I've paid for some of them, I tried using them. It's like, and I'm like, nah, I'm not doing this. And I notice a lot of them have like professional packages. So if I'm an accountant, I could get a professional license, and then I could set up like an account for each of my customers and clients. So I mean, it might have to be something like that, and then maybe the exit
Yep.
is like you just sell to QuickBooks, and you just become the real estate edition of QBO. Like
Yeah. Yeah. And
that might be the
another
way.
learning there was, agents, once they make a certain amount of money, they then oftentimes will do an F corp. And then that's where the CPA becomes much more valuable because you've got, payroll and many other things
Sure,
to consider there.
sure.
And so you start to get into that range of
Sure.
cost
I
that
I mean, I'll tell
is
you what, man.
necessary.
Like, we're just brainstorming here, Evan. To me, it feels like Simba might be the one product as a brokerage I buy, right? But I don't buy it to offer it. I buy it to resell it. Because here's the other thing. I should have mentioned the third thing. Most real estate agents are not. How do I put this? They're real bad at business.
It's funny how that works.
so,
Yeah.
so it's that Jay-Z song, right? I'm a businessman. I'm not a businessman. I'm a
That's
businessman.
right.
It's that a few of the top agents I found, generally speaking, they are a business man. Most real estate agents are just salespeople. They're just out there, like they have no idea what their margins. They don't know. They don't know their
Yeah.
financials, and they don't care. What they want to do is get a lead. Just talk to people, get somebody to say, "Hey, I want to buy a house. Great, let me help you." They're service providers, and they're really good at that. So a lot of them look to like the broker, and maybe they should look. So here's an idea for anybody. So if you're a brokerage, think about this: go acquire like a local CPA firm, and you launch a brokerage CPA firm. Right? So here's why you want to join our brokerage: your split's going to pay for all your accounting, and I'm
Yeah.
going to go buy Simba to just make that super easy for me. Just
Yeah.
throwing it out there,
Well,
right?
I think you're 100% right that, these brokerages, one, they have to start to figure out how to support their agents. And one thing that Simba is uniquely positioned to do is retain agents, because an agent's either going to leave the industry because they're not
Yep.
built for it and they just fail. Or what we see very often is if you look at, churn, when do agents often churn? It's taxes. It's tax season. I don't have enough money to pay my
Mm-hmm.
taxes. I didn't save. I wasn't disciplined.
Yep.
And I got to go find a W-2. I got to
Yep.
go make some
Yep. Yep.
money. So, let's leave it there.
Hey man,
But
Evan, so check this out. Like,
I'm
seriously,
always down.
maybe that's the next growth thing for Simba. Like, let's be creative about this. Maybe the way forward is, if I'm Compass, I go buy Simba, and I go buy an accounting firm, right? And that way, it's like for the agent, look, instead of paying your CPA $2,000-3,000 every quarter or whatever the number is, this is included in your split. But your split's going to be 20%, not 10, right? Something
Yeah.
like that. I mean, there's got to be a way to make those numbers work. And then in turn, then we have Simba, right? So we know that we can process this. Our accountants, our bookkeepers can handle all of this for the agents. And because of that tax issue, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to, when we pay you, because we are your accountant as well as your broker, we're just going to hold back part of that, like, wage withholding. But without it being W-2 withholding, we're just going to put in this, like, your tax account over here, right? So that you're never like, and we'll file your quarterly taxes for you. We'll do all of it for you. And now you're going to be a 70-30 split, right? But
Yeah.
you're not paying for your accountant. You're not leaving the industry. You're not paying tax penalties or whatever the hell, And there could be like, dude, there's so much you could do with something like that, right? Here's an
Yeah. That's
example
right.
of this.
Right where Simple was margin.
Right,
Margin right
like
there.
a
You're
lot of
right.
these agents, they form these LLCs because they're told they should, blah blah blah. And like, yeah, well, and then they go and buy some Dodge Charger or something. Like, hey man, if you lease that through your LLC, you bought a truck, then it's tax write-off. Like, there's all sorts of things I think brokers could do if they were to become more like a CPA for the agent and just charge more for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I could brainstorm that all day. Let's table that. Let's do that another call here.
Sorry, I can never get rid of my like consulting background, like trying to
No,
strategize. Like, hey, what about this?
that stuff's fun. That stuff's fun.
Yeah.
And it's a good point. Brokerages do need to be thinking more about their agents' financial well-being. I think MLSs have stepped up and shown a lot of interest in Simba, associations. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think the next thing is, how as a brokerage do you look at Simba as a tool to retain agents and empower them to do more business? So yeah, we'll table that. Let's keep talking about that another time.
All right.
Now, MLS landscape.
Yeah.
I got some questions submitted from listeners that I want to throw your way.
Okay.
Listeners, they see what we're talking about. They love the topics we're discussing, and they say, "Hey, Evan, I want you to ask Rob this question," or I'm about to have Amy from RE Distribute on. I want you to ask Amy this question. So I'm going to start doing some more fan submitted questions here. So here's one.
Yeah.
Direct quote here. I would love to ask his opinion on why more MLSs aren't merging more quickly. Like, honest opinion, ... Is this territorial? Is it protectionist? Is it a lack of bandwidth and resources to do these mergers? What's your thoughts?
My honest opinion is that it's because of realtor associations. Bottom line. So every MLS, not every MLS, but most MLSs, right? Because there are, I can't remember the number, a few broker-owned MLSs that are out there, but most of the MLS are realtor-owned because they were outgrowth of the realtor organization. And a lot of them, the local realtor association they cease to exist, basically, if they don't have the MLS. So, talking about consolidation, it's what I mean? It's not MLS consolidation as much. It's like the association behind it that has to be like, okay, well, how do we survive? And I think that's the primary reason. A secondary reason is for certain markets, and in particular, I'm thinking of the luxury resort markets, right? So your Vales of the world, your, I don't know, Hamptons, on the Long
Cape
Island,
Cod.
or right, like some of these super high end luxury markets, Beverly Hills, right? There's a fair amount of sort of the let's keep the outsiders out, like because this is our little enclave. I think some of that does happen, but for the most part, that's not what's holding back consolidation. I think it really is like, the local associates like, oh, well, this is how we make money. If we consolidate, then we lose power, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah, and also just along with that is job loss. If two MLSs come together and there's redundancy on jobs, that is an opportunity for an MLS exec or somebody MLS director to say, I don't support this consolidation.
Well,
they might lose my job.
Well, Evan, so that's the interesting thing about consolidation in our industry. This is the only one I know where you have a merger and nobody gets laid off.
Huh.
The most recent example I could think of is probably 10 years ago now, but I want to say like 9 MLSs in Indiana came together and they formed like the Indiana Regional MLS. Right? And I remember this being like touted as like, oh, look, like huge consolidation. Da, da, da. And I'm looking through the press release, I'm looking through the thing, no layoffs. Like nobody lost. I'm like, so you have 9 separate CEOs, 9 separate, like, okay. Like, so yeah, there's a lot of that as well.
Yeah. And then it comes back to, behind a lot of consolidations and just material decisions in general. I've had people reach out and want to talk a lot more about boards. I've had MLS execs reach out to me and say, I can't come on your podcast to talk about this, but I'd love to get more thoughts from your guest on the role boards play in, let's say, adopting new technology, making material decisions about how to govern data. What's your general take on boards and how MLS execs can either engage them better?
You're bringing me back to my consulting. Like this was actually what I really focused on as an MLS consultant. I think I'm one of the guys that really tried to do what I called MLS privatization, right? So back in 2016, I got on stage at CMLS conference and said, like straight up said, it's time for a divorce. Like realtor associations and MLSs have to get divorced. You have to privatize the MLS. And I thought you should do this for both the MLS and the association, because I think that codependent relationship hurts both of them. I really do. So I put it out there, and then I spent, I don't know, years like trying to actually, so since 2016 until like last year, that's what I really spent time trying to get done. So, what can I say about that? So, since this is like very common knowledge, everyone knows. Like, I think this. Like, I have this in writing. The problem is that the MLS and the Realtor Association are two completely separate animals, and you have to treat them separately, and they don't. Right. So, as a perfect example, there is an MLS that I did help out. They run a corporate board. Right. What I mean by that is your typical board. If you think about any corporation, you have board members who bring something for the company as a whole. Like you're an M&A expert, you're a finance expert, you're a technology executive. You know what I mean? Like you can help the organization's CEO make better decisions. Okay. You can help the organization itself make better decisions on specific things. And they're on the board typically, like the terms are 4 years long or 3 years long. Do you know what I mean? Like, look at Facebook's board. You know, they've been together forever, like, right, for a lot of
Yeah.
years, and you know, like that's a corporate board, right? The MLS needs that board. Okay. What they have instead is the same thing as the Realtor Association board, which is it's more of a democratic, like political organization. You know what I mean? So of course
Yeah.
there you want members to vote, and then it's almost like a representative city council. Like
Like a
that's what
popularity contest.
it's sure, but you know, whatever it is, it's still kind of trying to be this democratic, reflect the will of the organization, which to me makes perfect sense for a Realtor Association, right? The problem is when you apply that model to an MLS. Just like it would be a horrible thing to apply the corporate board model to a realtor association. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that's no good either, because then you just have all sorts of weird problems that happen out of like we're supposed to be a democratic not-for-profit organization, and yet the same 5 people run the board. You know, like it just gets bad, right? So to me, the two have to be completely separated. Realtor type governance, elections, representing the members' interests, blah, blah, blah. That's at the Realtor Association side. The MLS needs to be corporate board that protects the company. And here's the missing piece why it can't happen unless you privatize. In order for there to be a corporate board, the directors have to owe clear fiduciary duty to the shareholders, right, who own the company and who expect to make money from the company. Right. And right now, most MLSs are not owned by shareholders who are expecting a return on their money. Like they don't
Right.
care if the MLS does better or not. Like, so take any MLS in the
Yeah.
country, other than the broker owned, right? Say, I don't know, some association owned MLS, right? Say that MLS doubles their revenue. I'm the association, I own that MLS. Why do I care? Right?
Yeah.
It's not like my shares have doubled in value. Like I can't trade my shares. I can't, like what can I do with it? It almost doesn't matter, right? So
Yeah. What you're getting at is incentives, right?
yeah,
So it's, with corporate boards, Facebook's board, they're shareholders oftentimes. Most of
correct,
the time, they
correct.
own a portion of the business. So when they
Yep.
make a decision, they bring it to the board. That decision is going to affect, their ownership in that business. So you're getting at the fact that these boards really don't have any incentive
No,
to make decisions quickly and improve the MLS because they actually don't get any return on good decision making, is what you're saying.
no, because yeah, they're not elected by shareholders. They're not, they're fiduciaries to corporations, so they try,
And then on the broker owned, let's get into this incentive.
sure.
Their incentive wouldn't necessarily be, I have an opportunity to make some kind of upside on profitability. Is their incentive? What is their incentive? Is it to help themselves and be, a little maybe
Yeah,
protectionist of their environment, or what else would their
possibly.
incentive be? As a
And I think we've seen situations where that's been the case, right? So there's a big antitrust case recently that Department of Justice filed against I can't remember. I think it's called Consolidated MLS or something like that. But it was an MLS down in South Carolina. I think it was Hilton Head actually. Um, that was broker owned, and they got sued by the Department of Justice because they were engaged in all kinds of anti-competitive behavior, right? Because the brokers were like, "Hey, we're going to use the MLS to keep competition out." Like
yeah,
so. Yeah, that could happen. But at least it's better than nothing. right? Because brokers are business people ultimately. So to me, if you have a broker-owned MLS and somebody goes to him and says, "Listen, your MLS is worth 100 million. I'll give you 150 million for it," they'll at least think about it.
Yeah.
They'll at least be like, is that worth it?
Yeah.
Right? Whereas like a not-for-profit, let's say someone goes and buys an MLS from a nonprofit for $100 million. Okay, what are you gonna do with it? Like, congrats, Realtor Association of wherever, right? You have $100 million. Like, what are you gonna do with it? It's not like you can give it to your members. It's not like, the executives at the Realtor Association can, go buy a yacht with it. You're not for profit. You have to put it into reserves, and then what? Like, do you know what I mean? So there's no incentive to do anything like that.
Yeah, I do agree that you've got to start separating out, these nonprofits and creating a for-profit model around these MLSs. I mean, they're products. They're driving innovation within the industry. And so let's get to your venture here. Tell us a bit about what you're building.
Sure.
And just start with the high level, and then we'll dive in and kind of contrast what we've been talking about here with what you're building.
So at a high level, I'm building Decentre Property Exchange. The company's name is Decentre Labs, but what I built is an auction-based multiple listing service. Right? So this is like a long story, but let's put it this way. During the pandemic, one of the things I saw was just agents, brokers, and consumers all getting incredibly frustrated, right? Because they're just like, I've written 15 offers and lost them all, and I have no idea why. I'll go and make an offer $30,000 over list price, and I'll still lose. And I don't know why, right? I don't know why I lost, because the listing agent doesn't have to tell you, right? In fact, a lot of listing agents feel like, well, that's client confidential information. I can't tell you why you lost that bid, right? So it was just this massive frustration during 21. I'm like, look, honestly, we have a lot of us kind of who are kind of the thought leaders or gurus in real estate. For a long time, I felt that, the best way of doing this actually is auction, like open auction. They do it in Australia. I think Norway does like 90% of their real estate deals are done through auction, because that way you make a bid, somebody outbids you, you go, hey, I really want the house. I'll outbid him. And ultimately you get to a market price, and, and then the highest bidder gets the house, right? And I thought that technology had advanced to a point where that was possible now. So I wanted to do that. Thing is, I also know the MLS space, and you cannot build an auction platform in North America on top of existing MLSs. I don't believe you can. Dorsey tried and ultimately didn't work out because you just can't. You have to actually become an MLS yourself in order to do that. But the second order effect, the thing that I was really like looking forward to was, DPX is always meant to run parallel to the traditional standard MLS, because it's this niche product, right? But to the extent that we could get some of the data, I wanted to sort of open it up. Like, why do we make it so hard for prop tech? Why do we make it so hard for vendors to build stuff? For brokers to try stuff. So and again, because of my background and experience with MLS, with governance, with a lot of these things, I just felt like I'm gonna try and change that. The key technology that made me think this was worth doing is in 2021, I got real deep into blockchain tech, right? And I thought that most cryptos were bullshit from the start. Like I said, I'm a Bitcoiner, but that's a whole other conversation about Austrian economics. But I thought that blockchain technology, the idea of distributed ledger computing, I thought that was legit. And I was like, this is going to change the world. And one of the ways that it changed the world is the DAO thing, right? So decentralized autonomous organizations, where you could have the users themselves essentially govern the entire organization. I thought this is actually how an MLS should be run, right? Where you don't have a board of directors, you don't have, any of that. You don't have some dark secret meeting rooms where you're setting policy. Just let the users do it through DAO mechanisms. So that's what I built. That's what I have. And I'm trying to get it out there.
a system of programmatic consensus to push innovation forward.
I think so. I mean, so what I look at it is like, if the entire marketplace doesn't want innovation, then don't do it. But you guys are voting for that, right? If you want innovation, then do that, right? And a key thing behind it, key principle for me was, and again, I've been in those boardrooms as a consultant where the board of directors is discussing some policy change, some MLS rule, right? Hey, when somebody comes in and wants to have a AVP, affiliated valve valve partner, VOW partner, right? Then we're going to make them do this and say you have to have our logo on your website, and we're going to require password changes every 3 weeks. I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
You're a realtor sitting on the board of directors because you're serving a 1-year term, in your local association as the MLS committee liaison or whatever person. Like, why are you making product decisions about like, that doesn't it made no sense to me. So I felt like when I launched DPX as an MLS, like, our rule set, I want to say, is 10 pages long, right? Whereas the typical MLS 160 pages. And my thinking on it is, I'm not a broker, I'm not an agent, I'm not a developer, right? Why would I make any rules? I would just create the platform. You guys make the rules, right?
Yeah.
Here's governance focus. Make the rules, right? Discuss it amongst yourselves, debate, and then vote. Whichever rule, policy change that wins, that's what we'll implement, right? 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, this was a terrible idea. Let's undo that. Cool. Propose, vote. We'll repeal it. Like, you know what I mean?
And I think
just thought that's the way
there's a component of that also unlocks faster decision making, because there's asynchronous decision making going on versus let's synchronously get together as a board every month or every quarter and have a large list of stuff to go down. I think that there's some power in that. And you mentioned you basically started a new MLS here. Where geographically are you focusing first? How do you think about rolling this out?
So right now, as of like 3 weeks ago, we are now national, except in, I want to say, 9 states, because we don't have an auctioneer license yet. That's something we'll look at. Because, man, we're a baby startup. Like, we're still in like pre-seed stage. Like, so we're launched in Nashville and Phoenix, our 2 first test markets, and then now we're like anywhere in the country. I mean, if you want, I could give you the list of states, but off the top of my head, like Georgia, we can't do Georgia. You need an auctioneer license. South Carolina, probably as well. Like California, I think we can do California. There are certain states that we just don't want to mess with because we're auction based, but we're national right now. Now, having said that, I'll be honest with you, Evan, it has not been easy, because getting consumers and agents to try something new, especially in this housing market, is not easy, right? Yeah. So it's a bit of a slog, but that's okay. If it was easy, then everyone would do it.
That's right. And I want to ask, when you look at the landscape, now that you're a founder in it, you're building this, we've talked a bit about, we make it so hard on founders. There's so many components of that, and I want you to pick one that you think is most acute. Is it access to data? Is it just knowledge of the industry to know where to penetrate? That one might not pertain to you as much given your experience. Is it the speed at which things move? If you were to mention one very acute pain that now you felt taking this product to market that you want to solve tomorrow, what would that first thing be?
Provisioning. Without question, provisioning. What I mean by provisioning is, as a vendor, you have to get permission to MLS data.
Yep.
Right? Whether you're a standalone developer, you're like, hey, I want to build this mobile app for dog houses, so I want the MLS data. Or you have a broker client says, okay, like say you're Simba. Some broker says, hey, this looks great, I want to buy it. I need to integrate with my MLS listings so you could do all the automated whatever accounting, right?
Yep.
That process.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's terrible. Yeah.
So I just generally call that provisioning. It's asinine. It's utterly asinine.
It is unbelievable.
it's not even like 1990s. It's almost like 1950s level. Like you literally have to print out and fill out paper forms, send it to a board of directors, and the board of directors have to approve you. And the next month's meeting was canceled, so it's going to be the month after that. Oh, some big issue came up, so we booted it to the next. Like you just go months, just months go burned, and you're just like waiting for approval. The client's like, what's going on? You know, like
Yeah.
that's without question
Yeah.
is provisioning.
And from my experience going through that process, there's a few things that stood out to me the most. Number one, just lack of documentation for a startup founder to strategically go about that process, identify what markets, identify what their tech stack needs to be, what kind of hires they need to have. If there's no information for me as a founder to understand how to integrate with these data sources, how to go to market through one of these MLSs, how am I supposed to prioritize and spend my resources intelligently? So that's number one, is just an extreme lack of documentation and content on informing founders on best way to do that kind of stuff. And then the other one was, I think you mentioned it there, like time. There's just no incentive for MLSs or associations to move in a timely manner whatsoever. But yet they're bold enough to say, oh, we're here for the agents. We're here protecting the market. We're making things competitive. When in fact, when you look at their behavior, it's the opposite. How can you say you're supporting competition and supporting agents when you can't make decisions on how to get better technology in their hands in a timely manner? And it takes 6 months to a year.
Sure.
How can you say both those things at once?
Because
I came across.
Okay, like I said, man, I spent 12, 13 years consulting for that. I think when they think we're enabling competition, they're talking about among the agents and brokers in a marketplace, right? That by having all your listings in one place, knowing, what's what, right? So it's not like a consumer has to call the listing agent or to get the information about the house. Right? It does facilitate competition that way. And I agree with that. Like that is true. But the MLS has never been a technology outfit. You know what I mean? Like, if you just think about the origin of think about the origin of what a multiple listing service is and was, right? The origin is a whole bunch of brokers getting together on a Thursday night at the local watering hole, right? Having a couple of drinks, saying, "Hey Sam, I got this new farm for sale. If you bring me a buyer, I'll give you half." Like, that's literally how the MLS began, right? And then it evolved into like the books. We're just gonna print, right? Rob has these 7 houses for sale, right? And Sam's got these 4. If you bring a buyer to the other, then we'll give you half. Like so it's never a technology company at its core. Technology. So the MLS to me, like every company in the 21st century is a technology company. Do you know what I mean? Like, doesn't matter who you are. My sister-in-law works for a warehouser, wood products company. You know what? Now they're a technology company that works in wood products. Like you can't actually. So the MLS is fundamentally what a transaction facilitation marketplace type company, and you have to use technology, right? So no, they're never going to, be like, hey, from a developer standpoint, they're going to need whole better, much better documentation, right? That's number one. Number two, the vast majority of MLSs don't even control or own their own tech stack anyway. So, like a lot of MLSs, they don't have a single tech person on staff, right?
Yeah.
They just have the vendor, CoreLogic, Black Knight, FBS. Like that's essentially their entire tech department, right? And then you run into the second issue, which is, okay, you're a prop tech, you're a startup, and you're trying to get CoreLogic and Black Knight to return your phone call. Like, not say it doesn't happen, but it is what it is. That's number one. Number two, I know those guys. Right? I know the CoreLogic guy. I know Black Knight. I know FBI. They're good guys. But you know what? Their margins aren't exactly 80%. Like, they're not rolling in it. So they only have so many resources and they can only do so many things. And it's just like this system that we're caught in, right? So to me, To me, reform of the MLS system from within is very difficult. It's just very, very difficult. It's kind of like any complex system, right? That's sort of grown up over decades, right? Like you just get to, at some point, you just get to a level of complexity that almost the best thing to do is just like cut the whole thing. You know, it's like the Gordian knot. Almost better way to say, okay, you know what, we're going to do this over here instead. It has nothing to do with that system. And then maybe having that system adapt to the new system, you know, if that makes any sense. So it's almost like, and this phrase gets thrown around too much in, you know, prop tech marketing and PR, the whole paradigm shift thing. But that's almost what is necessary, right? Because it's just too hard to try and change it from within and say, okay, well, we're going to tweak this, you know. So as an example, okay, one way of dealing with provisioning, right? You know, the science, you could just have, look, here's open API keys, right? With good documentation. Okay, well now though, like, okay, you can create that. That's just a technology problem, you know. So any vendor could go out there and develop this. Now the issue is you have 600 different local MLS boards with different rule sets. So you have to have this API somehow encode all 600, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it just gets nutty, where you just throw up your hands. So you know what would be better? Let's just start over. And that's in effect what I've done, right? In effect, what I've done with DPX is, you know what? I'm just going to start over. I don't want to have to look at NAR rules. I don't have to look at, you know, like the traditional whatever. I don't want to look at governance. I don't want to look at any of that. It's just something completely new. So I can, and in fact, I do have APIs, right? Provisioning is simple. Like, we don't have rules because the community hasn't created rules. So, like, there you go, right? To me, that's the approach. And then we'll have to create a new system. And probably 50 years from now, that new system is going to get just as complicated, just as crud ridden. And then maybe, you know, somebody else will come along then and reboot the whole thing once again. Like, that's creative destruction is capitalism. I'm totally cool with it. And I just think that's something that, you know, we should embrace. Because here's the thing, Evan, it isn't as if we don't embrace that, right? It isn't as if somehow real estate will just be kept in this pristine, you know, like things are today for the next 100 years. You know what I mean? Like there's just no, the world is going to force us to change.
It's not how it works. Yeah.
It's not how it works. You know, the world's going to force us to change. So we might as well like embrace it and then try and go forward with it. It's just really hard to do. And I get it. This is not a criticism, you know, of the existing MLS because they're serving a need right now. They're doing things right now for their clients, for their members, for their shareholders, for the associations. They're doing the best they can. It's just, like I said, when you're caught in a very complex system, it's really hard to change that from within, you know?
Yeah, 100%. So, now, enough with kind of the down, kind of the sad stuff. When you look forward into the future, what is getting you most excited right now about what you're seeing in the space? We'll end it there.
Boy, that's a really good question. I think what's getting me most excited are some of the younger, you know, founders like yourself, like Hayden, you know, who are coming to the industry with, you know, some deep experience in other industries, right? And saying, hey, here's a better way. Let's try and do this. I think there's enough energy. There's enough really smart people who are trying to solve real problems. I think that part's really exciting. Like I said, the barriers to doing that are kind of high right now. I think those barriers are going to come down one way or the other, right? It will either happen organically because, you know, people like me, people like you, you know, some enlightened MLS, you know, like making things a little bit easier, or it's going to happen because the world is going to force us to, right? Like these lawsuits that are happening are an existential threat to MLSs, right? Who knows what could happen with, you know, something like AI computing, you know, if it really does take things to the next level, you know, like, so the world's going to change. So I'm excited, you know, about that. And just having, you know, sort of smart young people, younger founders like in our industry is what excites me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing it more and more. And having a front seat to that with this podcast
Yeah.
is eye opening. There
Yeah.
is a surgence of, very young founders. And you're right.
Yeah.
They're from different industries,
Yeah.
but I think it's exciting because they all, despite the hurdles, still, push as far as they possibly can and are
Yeah.
in a lot of ways at some point saying, here's what's in my way. And we're starting to get more vocal with it.
Yep.
And we have more ways to get vocal with it. And this is just one of those platforms where
Yep.
we can have founders on and get vocal with this stuff
Yep.
and start to see some change. And I think, having Sam and Josh on here from Reso, I think that's so important because, one of those things that can help grease the wheels is standards. I think that's just like one of the first principles things that needs to be done in this industry is we got to get standardized. But yeah, you were going to say something there.
So I think the only other thing I want to add on to that is, and this is my personal bias, right? Because this is why I started my company. Right? I actually think the thing that will change everything is this sort of new blockchain-based distributed computing technology, right? And I don't know which layer one's going to win that, right? Is it Ethereum? Is it Solana? Is it, nobody knows. But I think the idea, the computing will not be done in like my server or my computer. It will be done kind of on the network as a whole. That's going to change everything. Yeah. And because real estate is such a giant part of the economy, like it's like a third of our GDP, man, right? So there's no doubt in my mind that real estate will change. Not because even if we fight it like crazy, even if you all say, nope, we're all going back to the books, no more prop tech, done. Even if that were to happen, the rest of the world will change into this decentralized, distributed sort of technology paradigm, which can only change real estate. We're just too big a part of the global economy, right? To not be changed by that.
I think you're definitely onto something with that thought, and I've thought about this a lot too, and many others. Zach Gorman we've had on here. Mm-hmm. We talked about this as well. I think the unique thing about the real estate industry is it's already in a way decentralized.
That's right.
It's robust. It's very hard to change for a reason. Nobody in New York City can tell me, Lexington, Kentucky, how to manage, our local market. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this industry is it's decentralized.
That's right.
But the reason we're doing this podcast is decentralization and kind of this bureaucracy that comes along with the current way that we manage decentralization in this industry makes it really hard to innovate.
That's right.
And it brings about certain challenges. So I think you're definitely onto something. And I think we're so early. We've had, one cycle of, crypto and blockchain and what that means coming out of that cycle. I don't know yet. We don't know. It could, we'll see. There just needs to be a killer application beyond, I think, Bitcoin. You could argue that there really hasn't been a killer application for crypto or blockchain yet. And so coming out of this cycle, we're surely to see one. And I could definitely see real estate being one of those markets that people really target.
Yep. No, there's no question. I mean, like I'm a big fan of DeFi, right? So is it a today thing? No, of course not. Of course it's not today. But I've gone to DeFi lending networks just because I wanted to see for myself. And the idea that you could get a loan pushing 3 buttons, it's insanity, right? And I'm like, okay, this is going to happen. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be a particular coin or whatever. Who knows, right? Maybe the governments get behind it. Maybe they won't. But it's going to happen because it is so much better. Yeah. And when that happens, it's going to affect real estate. It just is, right? Is it you? Is it me? I don't know how we get there. But I really do believe that. So it's tremendous exciting. So if I were a young coder, if I were a young technologist today, I'd be like, look, man, you want to be in prop tech? Then start looking at blockchain, right? Not for the crypto stuff. Like I'm actually one of these guys who I'm really glad the crypto crash is happening. I'm really glad all the altcoins are getting wiped, even if it's my altcoins. That was just a bunch
of bored people during COVID.
Yeah, so I'm actually glad of that because now I think we can surface what is this technology? What does it do, right? And I'm literally using it in my business. What does it let me do? It lets me get rid of boards of directors of an MLS and allow for direct voting by the users themselves. there's going to be a million other things like this, right? Like, I've already said this. Somebody should make an HOA DAO, right? Because home HOAs are like the worst governance like, people get sued. It's a fucking nightmare. Someone should create a DAO platform for people to go and put their HOA governance on it. So each homeowner could just vote for whatever thing you want to do, right? It's not me, but I'm giving that, like, somebody please build that. There's going to be a million opportunities like this. And I think it's exciting to be here. You know,
it is.
We just gotta solve a couple problems, man. We just gotta solve a couple problems.
Well, we're an hour in here. We could probably talk for another hour. I know we can. So let's end it while we can. Sure. Appreciate you coming on, man. We could again do this many times. Appreciate you being a fan and reaching out and just participating in it. I'm glad you reached out and participated in what we're doing here. Yeah. And see the value and is willing to come on. So thank you.
Hey, let me leave with just a final idea for you to think about. We should do one of these as like a Discord server, like Friday night. If you're a prop tech guy, just get on this and we'll just talk about this kind of thing. Instead of like thinking about a podcast, we don't have to record any of it. I think that'd be fun. Yeah. You guys should lead the prop tech Discord Friday night party.
Love it. We'll make it happen. We'll figure out something there. But appreciate it, Rob. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. Take care, Evan.